you can flip the fact that you have nothing going for you with you have nothing to lose. Your belief that you're going to be viewed as a failure by your uncle be the sole reason that you live the rest of your life below your potential. In any kind of game position, so like in business, right? Every position has advantages and disadvantages. And a lot of people look at the really big guys and they're like, man, they'll look at me, they're like, must be easy for Alex, right? And I remember when we had gym launch and we had a very big company, I would tell the guys who are coming up, I was like, if you're trying to compete against me, I was like, you have advantages. I was like, if you're on a sales call, you're like, listen, you're just a number to Alex. You're never going to talk to Alex, right? Here with me, you're going to get my attention. I'm the one, right? I was like, that's how you're going to throw stones at me. I was like, but on the flip side, if it's me marketing to the masses, I'm going to be like, this kid's in his mom's basement. He has no idea what he's doing. He's been in business for 12 months. And of course he has no idea. Like, wouldn't you want somebody who has thousands of success stories behind it because we've made a system? Like, both sides have advantages. And so what happens is people are in this small position where they're more nimble, they can give more personalized attention to people, etc. And they see it as a pure disadvantage. And so you can flip the fact that you have nothing going for you with you have nothing to lose. And that means that you can take lots of risks very quickly and end up in the exact same position you are, which is nothing. And so if you eliminate downside, it should decrease your action threshold, meaning you should be able to do more things faster rather than do fewer things because you don't have a great life or things going for you. And so I think if people flip that, a lot more people would take action because they actually realize the advantage of their position. If you can eliminate someone's downside for action, it's like then the bias, it should bias you towards taking action. Because I think most of the times, I think this is really important, is that they have nothing objectively to lose. And so everything that they feel like they have to lose is purely made up in their mind. It's stories they tell themselves about what other people are going to think about them when those people aren't even thinking about them to begin with, right? But like, that's where they live all of their lives or live out all of the potential downside is in the mere reflection of what other people will think about them in the future should they fail. And I think that is like, if we were trying to get real and I'm like talking to somebody like, well, I mean, because I know that if I actually had somebody in front of me, they'd start squirming, right? If I said the first thing, right? Like, you have nothing to lose. And then, because then they do have something to lose and I just have to name it for them and be like, okay, who's the person in your mind? Who's the voice? It's like, blah, 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 6 questions deep. It's my uncle. Okay. Why? Like, let me state it this way. Will your belief that you're going to be viewed as a failure by your uncle be the sole reason that you live the rest of your life below your potential and regret everything that you don't do because of Uncle Tom? That's the wrong one. Uncle Harry. When you say it like that, all of a sudden they're like, I don't want to let Uncle Harry have that kind of power. And then all of a sudden it breaks and then they like get free of it. And so I think it's getting really specific and really narrow on because people say it's society, it's other people. It's like, it's usually 1 or 2 voices. And if you can get really specific on whose voice it is, then you can name it. And then like, I think I'm a big believer in like shame only exists in the shadows, which is like, once you put it in the light, you look at it and you're like, my mom? That was really it. Like when I really think about it, it's because it's not even just my mom. It's my mom in this circumstance. When I come back home for Thanksgiving, I just am so afraid of the comment that she's going to make. It's like, well, what if we confront that? Okay, your mom, you sit down at Thanksgiving dinner and you haven't made money yet and you quit your job. Now what? Is that better than you spending the next 60 years hating her or resenting her for the fact that she held you back? And then it's like when you give the real scenario, they're like, well, shit. And then like this weight comes off and they're like, fuck, I guess I should do this. And you're like, yeah. It's so scary. We avoid it. We avoid it. But it's like, I think the faster you can kind of build that muscle of like, I've got this hesitation. What is the real reason? Because like logically, I can do that whole thing. Cool, you have nothing to lose. You're poor. Great, 0, right? Okay, but then what is it that I do have something to lose? It's relational capital. It's status within my tiny micro community that doesn't matter, but like my perceived status. Okay, name the names, but by pulling it out from the shadows. But like that confrontation from here to here is, I think, where all the fear is, because it's embarrassing to be like, it's my mom. I think a couple frames that are just different frames around content making, since we're on the topic, that helped me was, one is seeing it as practice rather than the game. So like when we're doing a podcast, if you start, you're like, hey, I'm going to do a podcast, I'm going to post it. It's practice for me getting better for future me, rather than like, this is the main game. It's like, no, the game is the whole thing. And this is just like, we're still in preseason.
Yep.
Like these scores, these touchdowns don't even matter yet, right? Now you can say yet, even though like I can still feel like I'm in preseason, but I think from a mental framework, it actually decreases the stakes associated with doing it. And I think that's been helpful for me, especially it was in the earlier days. The other one was kind of the equal opposite of this problem, which is not wanting to start because no one's watching, because it feels like you're doing all this work.
What's the point?
What's the point? And so the little mental trick that I had was, one, I track lots of stuff. And the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And so that's a little thing that I found out. So like if you track 100 stats, then you only need one of them to go up so you feel like you made some progress. So that's like an easy one. And the second thing around the tracking is that I would look at like the biggest possible number. So a lot of times you can see like the impressions of, a post that you make. Even if you only got like 16 likes, I got like 100 impressions. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, if there was a room of 100 people, I'd be stoked. Like that would be awesome. Especially in the early days, I was like, I would totally feel like that was worthwhile. And so taking those little impression numbers and pretending that they were like micro events that I was making the work or the content for, all of a sudden made it feel worth it for me. And so the combination of I can have a small room and I'm really impacting, like when I get a view that has like 13 views on it, for like a video in the early days, I'd be like, well, shoot, I made this video and 13 people saw it as like a small room. Like that works. But looking at both absolute growth and relative growth. So it's like, okay, well, I went from 10 followers this month to 15 followers this month. It's like, well, you can say that you only gained 5 followers. I was like, or you can say that you went up by 50%. And that was exciting. And so then because I'm a Excel projection guy, I was like, okay, well, if I do this every month, just if we keep doing what we're currently doing at this trajectory, we compound at 13% a month.
Yep.
That's what it is right now. So 13% monthly, and that's just on one of the platforms we're on. And so I can just see what we're going to be at 6 months. And that's exciting. There's so many little things on this that I want to go into. One of them is that, so Dr. Kashey is my closest friend. He's like a behavioral, whatever, loves studying why humans do things. And so people who are most successful, a lot of times it's not that they necessarily have more willpower. They find other ways to reward themselves. And so he's like, the more skills you have, the more ways you have to reward yourself. And so somebody can extend how long their time horizon is because they do gamify it. So people who don't have the skills of figuring out ways to reward themselves in the meantime can't make it the whole way. But that's like when you're doing cardio and you're like, okay, it's 5 times 5 to get out of here, right? You create micro games within the longer game to keep yourself going. And the thing is, I've seen that across verticals. So like if you look at, so Travis Mash is a Olympic lifting coach out of North Carolina. And he has this really cool way of getting lifters to PR every workout, to have a personal record every workout. And what he does is he have them map every single set and rep range for every single lift at every weight. And so what happens is all you have to do is go through your book of 200 lifts and every single weight, and you can always find one that you did a year ago. And
oh my God, this is my 8 rep max PB on good mornings.
Yes. And you're like, well, I can hit 9 on this, or I can add 5 pounds to it. And so every workout they win.
Yeah.
And so they get excited because they get rewarded every workout. And so that's why it's like the more ways you track, the more ways you can win. And then I think that's those little micro wins can keep you going over the long game that you have to just keep playing.